So, just to give a bit of context, so where we're working and what our talk's about. We're a web agency founded in 2000, we're based up near Oxford. We employ around 35 people. And our purpose from the talk this morning is we do digital stuff for the good guys. So what that means is we're working primarily with clients in the third sector, so that's people like charities, non-governmental organisations, universities, think tanks, generally people who are trying to make the world a better place. You won't find us working with sort of oil companies or arms dealers or anyone like that. And thankfully we're in a position where we can kind of make those judgments and choose our clients. We offer a range of services from sort of custom animations, people like Citizens Advice and WWF. We do digital marketing work, so sort of SEO campaigns for Yahoo and Google Grants Management or Google AdWords Management, and right through to sort of bespoke sort of web applications. So, proper sort of software engineering for people like the Football Foundation, who sort of give various sort of grants to sort of football teams around the UK and things to manage that. But my role is, and also the majority of our work comes from the sort of specification and design, the build and then the subsequent support of large content managed websites using Drupal. My role is primarily as a project manager delivering these large Drupal sites, but also heading up our sort of Drupal or content management team. And in that team, we've got 8 developers working full-time, 3 project managers, of which I'm one of them, and 3 designers who probably spend about sort of half of their time on our projects. So as a team at the moment, we currently work with over 15 concurrent... we currently work with over 15 concurrent Drupal clients. These include ClickSargent up here, the UK's leading cancer charity Children with Cancer, the Love Who Take Waste campaign, which is the UK government campaign for reducing food waste, the UK Green Building Council, who are promoting sort of sustainable construction, and then think tanks, so the King's Fund, the Health Think Tank, we also work with the Nuffield Trust, another one, and Joseph Rowntree Foundation's Social Policy think tank. And sort of the large project I'm working on at the moment, which I can't show you the design for because it's in build, is redoing the University of Oxford's website. So this is Oxford ACUK is the project we're working on. So quite big, high name, sort of high street names, the kind of things that you can tell your mum you've done that website and they know what you're talking about. With this comes in a sort of multi-client approach and working with sort of multiple different projects. There are a number of quite significant challenges that we sort of have encountered over the years. Now, because our work comprises a number of different tasks, so we have sort of support tickets, which can be really minor things through to quite sort of critical emergencies. We have sort of maintenance tasks that we do, so each month we'll sort of have to apply various security updates and just keep all these existing builds sort of up to date so that there's no sort of holes in there and security implications. Existing clients will want new features and new elements added to their site. ClickSargent example I showed at the moment, we're now doing various things because they've got some Christmas campaigning, we need to put some more graphics on their site and to sort of tidy up some bits for sort of mobile donations and keeping those sites sort of innovative and looking forward. And then of course we've got the big new projects that we're working on to deliver brand new sites for people. And when we're doing our new sites, we, as a development methodology, we've tried a few things, but we've settled on feature-driven development. And this is what we manage with our Kanban system. All of our work, including features through right down to small support tickets, are managed through a ticketing interface. We tried a few different systems. We now use a system called Codebase, which is pretty good for the sort of multi-client environment, which a lot of the sort of other big names aren't particularly well suited in that space. one of our differentiating factors, which adds to our challenges, is we work in a really collaborative way with our clients. It's not a case of sort of, you know, the waterfall days, a big spec up front where you disappear off 6-9 months ago, ta-da, here's your site. Those days are long gone, if they really even existed. We have to sort of we do sort of just-in-time specifications on the features that we're taking through. Our developers sort of liaise directly with our clients to understand sort of the nature of what they're after with each feature. And then we have to sort of solicit feedback from our clients when we're going through this process. So that in itself presents a number of sort of, you know, further challenges here, because if we've, you know, started work on a feature and then we need to ask a client a question, some clients are really responsive and you'll get a response within sort of 20 minutes, half an hour or so. Others, for whatever reason, it might take 3 days, a week. You know, it's not unheard of that it's like 3 weeks before they kind of go, actually, yeah, I'm really interested in prioritising this above the other work that they're doing. So we have to sort of have some way of managing our workload so that our developers and our designers and project managers remain sort of active and are delivering valuable work, even though we don't know when that sort of, what that sort of feedback timeline is going to be. So before introducing Kanban at Torchbox, we tried a number of methods and methodologies. These were the sort of more dogmatic thing. So we did use Scrum beforehand. Didn't really work with the sort of time box sprints of you've got to do this work in this time period, because if a client wasn't ready or they weren't signing things off, you've then got people sort of idling. And similarly, if another task takes a bit longer than we thought, you've got people getting angry because their task that was supposed to start on the Wednesday now can't start till the Friday. There's a lot of wasted time. So the only thing that we have kept from Scrum, and we've been using for pretty much 5 or 6 years now, is obviously the daily stand-up meeting, which comes with Kanban, but I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. But when we did introduce Scrum, introduce Kanban, bit of stuff like that, one of the sort of the main challenges that we face is, you know, if we're limiting work in progress, how can you say to client A, sorry, we can't do your work at the moment because you know, our WIP limit is defined with client B and C, and they haven't fed back on it. Client A is like, I don't care, get on with it, build my site, that's what I'm paying you for. So, over time, we've made a number of sort of adaptations to our environment and how we've implemented Kanban to sort of fit with these scenarios. And the idea of this talk now is to sort of talk you through what we started with, how we've been going, and what we've done to adapt the Kanban method to fit our scenario and where we're going to afterwards. But it's worth noting that all of these changes have naturally come through sort of collaborative improvement in our team, so sort of specific examples that people have suggested and sort of, you know, developing policies as a group. It's not me or some consultant trying to come in and be dogmatic about it. So what did we do? So started in the usual sense of visualising our work in progress, and we tried a different number of sort of columns to map sort of how a task that we work on goes through the system. But essentially we've now settled on these, and these have pretty much remained static for the last sort of year, 18 months or so. Backlog, fairly standard, it's just the next things that haven't been started. Planning, we're understanding what it is. Ready means we know what we're going to do, we've defined our acceptance criteria, and it's ready to actually start developing, which is doing the work, and then acceptance is sort of showing the client, making sure they're happy with it. And then, yes? So.
Is this for big projects or all the work?
All the work. So one ticket up here could be, I can't log in. Some ticket up here is build an event system. We would break an event system down into smaller features than that, but it is for all of our work. Now, initially, we had this, but then it became quite difficult to understand, well, which work belongs to which client. So, first approach was trying different colours of post-it note, but it's not particularly visual, and it also kind of limits us with the number of availability of post-it notes that 3M are going to produce, so we don't want to limit our business in that respect. So it soon became better that we've now introduced what we call rows for each client. So reasonably controversial in some circles and some discussion around the Kanban community, but we find this clearly differentiates what tasks are in flight for each of these clients. And also, each of our clients has a defined project manager and a technical lead, so it's really easy, it's actually doing lots of work to do the visualization for us and show us what's happening for each project. Can anyone tell me what's missing off here from a traditional Kanban board? Yep, well done. Width limits. Which brings me on to our next element, which is we don't have column level width limits. And the reason for that is we're actually a single team who will take a task from the backlog to completion. So we're not handing it over to testers. It's likely that one developer will do a task throughout the process. Sometimes that changes depending on the skill set, but it's not the normal case is that someone will take a task and see it right through to completion. But we still need to sort of manage or limit the work in progress. So we've got that focus. And we do that with what we call sort of client tokens. So these coloured dots actually have the sort of logo of each of those clients on it. And we have a fixed number per client. Through experimentation and working out, we found about 7 work well for each client. Kind of enough to kind of keep things going while we're waiting for feedback, but not too many that we've got loads of stuff going on. Obviously, tasks in the backlog column here don't count towards our width limits, so they haven't started yet.
Was that 7 for work for each of your clients?
For each of our clients, yes. Because we're not, although we have lots of clients, as you'll see actually on the next slide, a lot of the time our work is waiting for feedback from clients, like I mentioned at the beginning. So we actually needed a way to visualize that. So we added another token to our tickets here. It's this little black C in the yellow circle shows that we're waiting for feedback from the client. And then the client also knows that they're waiting for this because it's managed on a ticket system, so when we assign it to them and ask them for their feedback, they get an email notification and it comes back. So with these client tokens, bear with me, this looks really complicated, but it's not actually, that is quite a lot easier in practice. We have also put sort of personal avatars on these, on each of our tasks here for each team member. And we found again, just through sort of collaborative work, that each of our team members has 3 magnets per person. And that kind of works really well because it keeps their sort of individual focus on a few tasks. They can plan their day. By putting these on at the beginning of the day, when we have our daily stand-up, the board is telling the whole team the information of what's going to happen on that day, including project managers, who can then sort of step in and say, actually, Justine, that work there is less important than something up here that we just need to get finished.
Question, if 2 people should work on the same work pattern?
Then we will put 2 tokens on that. So 2 people have decided that they're going to work together as a pair programming, then they can both put their marker on it. The point is to communicate to the team who is working on that task. Tasks in the ready column don't have any markers on them because no one's actually working on them. They're ready for someone to pick it up. Like I said earlier, in reality, it's usually the same person who picks that up because they're who's done the planning, but it does give that handover point if they kind of are pulled back onto a task that was waiting for feedback from a client, or indeed they're ill, or we need to sort of hand it over to a different skill set. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, the implication is that the people are working on 3 things at once.
Well, up to 3 is the
Right.
So typically, we have these here to indicate what's going on over the day, and what's usually someone's stand-up will be, I'm working on this first, if I get time then I'm moving on to that, and then the third thing. Sometimes people will say, I'm all day on this. But no, they don't sort of try and multitask it too much like that. Now it's not perfect, because if we have a task and the client comes back and everyone's working on other things, sometimes it can be without an owner, but that's only until the next person is then available to scan the board, have a look, see what element they can pick up, and then work on, the idea is working on stuff that's already started, so we're increasing our flow. They're not going, what do I do, and picking something new up. And finally, we have a fourth special token that we've introduced. This was came from another member of our team who was quite new to the team. He was sort of having sort of problems, or not problems, but sometimes he didn't really know the full context of the work he was doing, and it was needing to ask for help from other team members. But obviously, if you're just kind of shouting for help each time, that's interrupting people and you're making them multitask. It kind of interrupts people's days. People don't like it. So we introduced this concept of a help token that they can just go and put on the board on the task that they're on, and then get on with another task and try and keep things moving through the system. When someone else is then free and they're just having a coffee break or something, and they walk past the board, they can see that help token, and then they can go, actually I'm going to go over, just see what the problem is, and then sort of help that person either through pair programming or a bit of training, but effectively keeping that work moving. And any help tokens obviously that remain on the board at the next daily stand-up are then flagged, and we're like, you can't get through the stand-up until any of those help tokens have been resolved, or we've defined the next action of who is going to help this person, so that we don't get items that are sort of stuck there because people don't know what to do. So, the next slide is what does our board look like in practice? So, this is the real nitty-gritty of it, rather than the sort of fancy sort of slideshow tokens. This is a photo I took yesterday of our whiteboard on the wall in our office just outside Oxford. So you can see the columns that we talked about here. You can see the rows that we have for each of our clients. Kind of extends a bit further down as well. You can see for a task here, we've got the avatar here for Chartered Society Physiotherapy, some tasks that we're doing for them. It's now waiting on feedback from them. Even though it's in the development column, it's more that someone's come up with a question, we need to resolve that with their input, so it's back with them. You can see on other tasks that we've got Dan here with his sort of avatar on it, so we know that today he's working across those two tasks really. He hasn't used his full capacity of those three tokens. And obviously I've placed that there for the purpose of this slide, but you've got the help token that would then be resolved. So if
there is a new client coming, like a prospect client, how do you decide if you have enough capacity to accept the new client?
So that's a whole new talk, but I do. We have a one of the sort of metrics that I measure is sort of we do sort of 9-month planning, and we understand through what the level of expected sort of client demand is. We look at the financials of what they've spent with us over the previous few months, and work that down into a metric we call developer months. So if you've got one person working full-time for a client for 1 month, that's one developer month. And then actually there are charts that I have which is sort of demand versus supply of effectively development tasks. And we will look at our pipeline for that, and then we can plan in when a new project can start based on sort of current workloads and the level of demand to support clients.
Are there any patterns that you see on the board? In terms of, I can't imagine that it's all, like everybody's spread all over the place. So I assume that you see some patterns of people, if the client progresses, then everybody swarms in that, or?
Kind of. There are some times where one client has the visual sort of elements come to it. So sometimes you see one client, this one here, for instance, where it's all C's, that it's all waiting on the client. Now, the project manager will always review that, generally on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis, and sort of prod those tickets and try and get them moving. But sometimes we see that some projects are sort of stalled because we're either waiting for feedback or people aren't sort of working on those tasks. But because each row has a project manager, that's the kind of person who's going to be sort of championing that client at the stand-up and saying, why is this not being worked on? People can then fit that in and on their sort of other workflow. just conscious of time, so I'm just going to move on slightly. We'll hopefully have time for questions at the end. I just wanted to talk about the outcomes that we've seen from this. First off, improved quality, and this is through limiting our work in progress and thus focusing on the task in hand. We then make people sort of, when there's a difficult task that comes up, that has to get addressed. It's not that, oh, that was a bit hard. Oh, this one over here is a much easier task that will fill the afternoon and maybe this one will go away, because it will always be on the board and people will be prodding it and the team will actually kind of go through and say, why isn't this moving? And because of that, then we're not sort of having all those difficult discoveries at the end of the project, like that graph in Liz's slide at the end there, which kind of jumped up. We have all those sort of, if you like, difficult discoveries throughout the project, so it spreads that risk and spreads the learning, so we can improve our, what we're delivering. And secondly, developers are focusing on sort of the task from inception to completion. They're having direct contact with the clients, they're communicating with them, they're doing screen shares, and so by actually working with them in this direct manner, they're being able to sort of deliver what the client wants first time, and we're not seeing what we used to see a few years ago, which was things that were being closed, being reopened and coming back. And part of that, so obviously the visualization aspect of this, is that the team, although you might be a developer working on one task, you see the bigger picture, you see what's coming in the pipeline, you see what the rest of your team are working on, so you have that sort of team sense of ownership of the work that we're doing. And with that then, we actually have seen better financials, primarily because we've reduced by having the developer talk to the client directly and know what the schedule of work is, we've removed the project manager bottleneck, where every task the developer did it, fed it back to the project manager, they then sent it to the client, then they went, oh, actually it's not quite right, and you had this sort of back and forth with the middleman who really, well, that wanted to do me out of a job, wasn't adding any value at that point. And secondly, from the financial side of things, because people know what work to do and they can pick up the next task, it means that if I'm out in London like I am today, I know the team back there will be picking up the next appropriate task to fill their day. So if they have just sent something to the client, they've got 3 hours left in the afternoon, they can look at the board, work from the right, and pull the next, try and progress those items that are in flight and move them forward without sort of not really knowing where to go. Secondly, the sort of team cohesion, or thirdly I should say, team cohesion has really increased with this because we're seeing sort of through the daily stand-up, sort of ownership of tasks, and the sort of other people will say, why are you working on this? You were working on that yesterday, get back to it kind of thing. We need to focus on getting that one finished, don't pick up a new thing. Similarly, we've got people responding to the help tokens, so you're sharing that knowledge within the team. We're not having silos of knowledge where only 1 or 2 developers know about the project that we're currently working on. And also, despite some initial criticisms and some sort of concerns when we implemented this this was back in 2009 actually, we started using Kanban. I've seen that all of these changes that I've just talked through have come through the team suggesting specific sort of ideas and policies. And one of the things that I should have shown here is on this bit of the wall, we actually have a couple of A4 sheets which have the Kanban method principles printed on it, and also the policies that we have implemented as a result of it. So, most people now don't see that on a day-to-day basis, but when new starters come in, or we're showing this to clients as they do a tour of the office or something, they can actually see why we are making those process policies explicit. And then this broader adoption of Kanban, not through any sort of trumpeting around it, but we've seen as we've adopted this as our sort of our Drupal team, and perhaps more excitingly, even some of our clients have started adopting it in their offices to manage the work that their web team are using, whether that's involving us or not. They're actually sort of through experience of what we're doing, people are kind of getting involved, getting excited about it. And on that note, we've become kind of a bit of in the sort of web agency sector, people are taking note of our process now. You'll see that sort of existing clients are demanding that if they put work out to tender, that it's managed in this way, effectively because they've had a good experience with us. It's also becoming a differentiating factor when we're pitching to clients. We can talk through this process and you can see the sort of enlightenment on their faces as you sort of say, it's not waterfall, it's not Scrum, it's collaborative, this is how it works for you. And really people do get engaged with that. And I think the type of clients we're winning on the basis of this do sort of speak for themselves. And even last week, there's a guy, Professor Nigel Slack at Warwick Business School. He came and heard of this, came and spoke to us about a year ago with his new operations management textbook. It's a big meaty tome that gets to everyone who goes to Warwick and does an MBA, as a case study of what we do in that book. And our board and our implementation is now part of that MBA program at Warwick. But we're not done, because there are still some sort of bits that we're trying to work out and improve. Specifically, we've recently opened a second office in Bristol, so our team that was all sort of co-located from just outside Oxford is now split across 2 different sites. At the moment, we're still having a single daily stand-up, but in conferencing them in using Google Hangouts. That works really well. All the same sort of processes are happening at the Hangout, at the stand-up. But what we're not seeing, sadly, is the sort of visibility of that Kanban board. So that's where we're looking to sort of introduce, probably based on our code-based system now, is trying to see if we can move this in an electronic fashion, just so that we've got the visibility for our disparate team. But also, some of our clients have fed back that they want to see, can I see that Kanban board approach so that I can see what our tasks are, visualising that for their benefit. So hopefully that's kind of what we're working on at the moment. Yeah, that's us. I hope that's provided some useful material which you can kind of see how a sort of Kanban implementation works sort of in the real world. And I'm conscious that it's lunchtime now, stomach's rumbling a little bit, but if you have got any questions, well, I don't know if we've got time for them now or we can come and find me afterwards, but thanks very much.